Today on Locked On Canadiens, is Kirby Dach okay?
You're Locked On Canadiens, your daily podcast on the Montreal Canadiens, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi there, everyone, and welcome to episode 1163. As always, we thank you for making us your first listen of the day. As you know, we're free and available wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube, as part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where you get your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. What time is it? It's game time. My name is Laura Sab, also known as the Active Stick, and I'm not joined today by my wonderful co-host Ian Boisvert. Ian is traveling. It is my turn to be the fourth line plug in and sort of hold down the fort for the night. And I think the first thing that I want to talk about is some Kirby Dach discussion from earlier in the day. Then we want to do an LA Kings game preview. And finally, I wanted to talk, speaking of the LA Kings, of the preseason and the latest on rumblings about whether or not there is an NHL team coming to Quebec or not. Real quick, I do want to remind everybody that it is our mailbag episode tomorrow. So please send us your mailbag questions. You can send them to lockedoncanadiens@gmail.com. You can also tweet them to us or DM us at LO_Canadiens on Twitter. Our Instagram is Locked On Canadiens, and you can actually ask us questions there. And finally, you can leave them in the YouTube comments as well. Just put MBQ or mailbag question, just so that we answer it or we know that you want us to bring it up in a mailbag episode. All right, so let's talk about Kirby Dach. At the time that I am recording this, it is a Wednesday night. And during the day, I'm not sure why Kirby Dach took a therapy day, and someone asked Martin St. Louis about it, and he was non-committal about Kirby Dach appearing in the game against the Kings. And that obviously triggered quite a bit of panic. And then later on, Jeff Gorton said that he was sure that he would see Kirby Dach in the LA Kings game. So that also kind of, instead of alleviating people's fears, kind of raised a bit of skepticism. So let's talk a little bit about Kirby Dach. So my co-host and I are both on the record as saying that he's having a rough start to the season. But I think it's very, very normal. He is coming back from a devastating injury. And I think that it's very normal for him to be half a step behind. He is still getting back into game shape. So the fact that he's taking a therapy day might not be too much of a cause for alarm. It could just be that he's easing himself back into it. Things don't feel right. He's still trying to get back into shape or game shape. He's still trying to get that knee back into game shape. So I've decided that we're not going to read into it until we are told that there should be a reason to be afraid. Because I'm concerned about his play, but I'm not overly worried, if that makes sense. Like, I'm concerned in that he's struggling. He's, as my co-host put it, he's like half a step behind the play every single time, which is not ideal, in particular when you're playing against you're playing with a very fast line mate in Alex Newhook. And I think also there's a large part of this where, last year with Kirby Dach going out in the second game of the season, it really kind of derailed. It sort of felt like it kicked off a series of unfortunate injuries, and it derailed the season entirely. And we had a lot of hope on riding on Kirby Dach being okay to go this season, because he had shown us a lot of potential in the time that he has been playing with the Canadiens. And I think, the fact that he's had injury issues in the past kind of compounds that panic. I do want to point out it's all different injuries, though. So that's important to really to keep in mind. But I think the fact that, prior to the Patrick Laine trade, the Canadiens' two major acquisitions were, one, picking Ivan Demidov in the NHL draft, and two, the fact that Kirby Dach was going to be theoretically able to play a full season this year, right? Getting Kirby Dach back was considered a major acquisition. And there's a reason for that, right? Like the Canadiens last year, they had like their top line was great, right? With the emergence of Slavkovsky. I can't believe I'm still doing that this many years into his career. The emergence of Slavkovsky when he was allowed onto that top line, the chemistry that that line built, the improvement in Nick Suzuki's game, the improvement also in Cole Caulfield's game. He didn't score that many goals, but the other aspects of his game were kind of well-rounded and doing really well. But beyond that, the Habs didn't really have much. So to us, and that's no shade to, to Alex Newhook, to Yoel Armia, to Sean Monahan, all of those people that kind of tried to step up, Joshua Roy, Raphael Harvey Pinard, all of those people that kind of tried to step up and fill that void. But Kirby Dach represented to us depth. Like that's it. Like even before Line A. And then when Line A got injured, like when Line A got, he was our legitimate hope for having a like real depth and like a real threat, not just depth, but a real threat. Then he got injured, but we were still consoling ourselves with the fact that Kirby Dach was going to be back, right? And then his first game back, or his first preseason game back, he was flying. It was like he'd rediscovered playing hockey. And I totally get it, but that was not going to be sustainable for somebody who had missed almost an entire year, particularly with an injury that is that devastating and needs so much recovery. So I think, we're just very sensitive. Like we're very sensitive to anything with relation to Kirby Dach. So the idea that he may not be in the lineup tomorrow feels like the end of the world. It feels like, again, we're reliving that same cycle of just injuries over and over again. So I think that I've decided to withhold my worry. And you never know, right? Like therapy days could mean anything. It could mean, yes, the person is playing through injury, but it could also mean the person just like really needs to be slow in his return in terms of like, just like how prolific he is when he's playing, right? So I don't know. I've decided not to freak out. I'm a little bit more concerned with maybe like this might shake his confidence, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that there's a pretty fair chance we are going to see him in the lineup against LA. And I think that there's a pretty good chance that it's still going to take him a while to really catch up with the play and be a player that we're all happy with. Because I know there's a little bit of dissatisfaction, and I think our expectations maybe are just a little high, but that's okay. We should be having high hopes, and they should be striving for more every year. But I think, we're right now, at the time that I'm recording this, it is October 16th. But if we're still having this conversation on, let's say, November 5th, then I will worry. But until then, I've decided to withhold my concern. And with that, I do want to kind of switch over. It's going to be a little bit of a quicker episode today just because I am by myself. I do want to switch over and talk about the LA Kings game coming up tonight. And that's coming up in just one moment here on Locked On Canadiens. But first, this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You've heard us talk about FanDuel a lot, and there's a reason for that. It's because it is America's #1 sportsbook. It truly is one-stop shop. Everything is so easy for you. And, the NFL season has started. And if you're an NFL fan, I should say, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, which, as you know, is America's #1 sportsbook. And you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. And I'm going to say that again. You're going to get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com. All right, let's talk about this LA Kings game. So I think the first thing that I want to point out is that the Los Angeles Kings are on a 7-game road trip to start their season. And so far, it's not been going all that great. And on Monday night, they lost to Ottawa in an 8-7 game, right? So high scoring affair with zero goaltending. And then the night that I'm recording this, which is Wednesday night, the first night of a back-to-back, keep that in mind, they played the Toronto Maple Leafs, and they looked like frauds. Absolute frauds. So the Leafs beat them 6-2. Now here's the thing. The Leafs are a good team with a lot of firepower. We're going to get into that in just 1 second. But the LA Kings are supposed to be good. They're not supposed to be easily beaten by the Leafs. And so here's what happened. Austin Matthews had 3 points, goal, and 2 assists. Willie Nylander had a goal and an assist. Bobby McMann scored twice. Mitch Marner had 3 assists. I just think, this was a classic, this is why the Toronto Maple Leafs are good type of game. And the Kings didn't have much of an answer. They weren't able to kind of get it together, and their own coach was just kind of lamenting the fact that they weren't able to answer what the Leafs had, the Leafs firepower. I do also want to point out that right now, Max Domi is the Leafs second line center, and John Tavares is now the third line center. And I don't know what's going on with that, but I'm just going to let that sit with everyone for a moment. The Kings appear to be suffering from some sort of goalie issues or defense issues. Honestly, I'm not 100% sure because I did not see that Ottawa game, but I did see the Leafs game, and it was really not strong. David Rittich got pulled, and I don't know who we're expected to see in Montreal tonight from the LA Kings, but this is going to be another one of those games for the Montreal Canadiens where I believe it's winnable, right? They're on the second night of a back-to-back. They're in a slump. You could obviously get that they're angry and they're going to come out and they're going to beat the Montreals 8-2 and it's going to be, a whole disaster for the Canadiens. But I feel like this year's Canadiens are not last year's Canadiens and that this game is fully within reach. So I think the biggest thing the Montreal Canadiens really need to do is weather the beginning, right? Like they've had a couple of starts where we weren't pleased with them in the last few games, and they ended up squandering the game with that. So I feel like having a strong start is really important. But then obviously with the second period adjustments, like the Canadiens are going to have to be careful not to let the game get out of control at that point, which we have also seen this season. They haven't played that many games, but we've seen either strong start and then, flopping in the second period, and then or the other way around, like just really slow, and then whatever they are able to do in the second period, which admittedly is usually good adjustments, they're losing. So the first thing they need to do is truly just come out and not be asleep for the first 20 minutes or the first 17 minutes or whatever it was against Pittsburgh. They need shots on goal. They need to go after these goalies as quickly and as prolifically as they can. I think that's the second time I've used that word in this episode. This is what happens when I don't have a co-host to keep me in check. I think that's the first thing. And then the other thing is, we've seen the power play score a goal a game. I think we want to continue on that track. If you listen to our previous episode, we were talking about Mike Matheson. We're kind of in defense of Mike Matheson. And somebody pointed out it's not that people want Mike Matheson to run out of town. It's that they don't want him on the first power play unit. I beg to disagree. I beg to differ. I've seen a lot of trade Matheson takes. It's not just about putting Lane Hudson on that first unit. It is truly, he is a much maligned player here in Montreal. But that's neither here nor there. So I think if they're able to at least draw penalties, that's really good. And then just don't get hemmed in in your own zone. Like that is so fatal to the Canadiens, and they have shown such an inability to get out of their own zone. And there are many reasons for it. I think part of it is we talked about chemistry, right? Like they're trying to develop chemistry and they haven't played together all that long. This defense doesn't really know what it's doing, et cetera, et cetera. But I really think that with the actual players we have on this roster, their transition game really should be better than it is. You've got players like Lane Hudson, you've got players like Mike Matheson, you've got players like Yoel Armia. You've got those players that you're expecting to get you out of that zone, and it's not happening. So that's something that I'm really, really watching for. Like their defense really needs to be much stronger than it is. And when I say much stronger, I mean it was non-existent. It needs to be better, right? And so Marty's going to do his pairings switch up. I'm happy with Goalie, no problems there. I just feel like as a team, they're not able to get it together. And they're kind of resorting to passing to the opponent. And I'm not loving that. And they're shrinking back, which I am also not loving. They're shrinking back. They're not dynamic. They're not aggressive. And they're really letting the puck come to them, but it's going past them, and resulting in scoring chances for the opponent. So that's like a big one. And I just think that you can't underestimate this opponent just because they're on the second night of a back-to-back. Like, admittedly, we haven't seen the Canadiens do that this season yet. Just kind of take a game, not take a game seriously enough. But I do want to see. I don't want to see long stretches of game in their own zone like that. I cannot emphasize that enough. And I think the offense has been doing really well of late, but like they need support too. We always talk about run support for goalies. They kind of need support. Like the offense needs support. Like they need a chance to shine in their own in the offensive zone. And that's like when they do have that chance, things are going really well. We're really excited. And so I think that's a big thing. Again, we don't know if Kirby Dach is playing or not. We don't know if he's going to be half a step behind or not. I really, really don't know. But I just think that the LA Kings right now are there for the taking. They are a team that really should be better than they are. And I think that if this game was, a third of the way into the season, we might be having a different conversation. Like, I feel like at that point, the LA Kings would have found their strides. But today, like, this is a team that's underperforming. The Canadiens are a team that seems to be overperforming despite its issues. I want to see I want to see a lot of pressure. I want to see them capitalize. I want to see them win this game because the LA Kings are actually one of a few teams that has come out of the gate struggling. And I do want to talk about that real quick just before we go into our next segment. What is going on with the Edmonton Oilers and what is going on with the Colorado Avalanche? So for the past few years, I've been picking the Colorado Avalanche to, as my favorite team, as my favorite, team with potential. Um, just because it's a team I don't hate, right? So they're really, really letting me down right now. I don't know what's going on. We will ask our good friend K Mom, who has her finger on the pulse there. Once we have her on, she's, as Game Over Montreal. She's one of the hosts of this upcoming season, or this season. She had her debut after that Penguins game, and it was fantastic. So we'll ask Kay about that. And then I don't know what's going on with the Edmonton Oilers, but honestly, for some reason, I'm not super surprised. I feel like, the kind of Stanley Cup loser hangover is there. I've never had faith in them as a deep team to begin with. I just feel like, they should be better than they have been in the early going of this season. Both teams will probably figure it out, and they'll probably both make the playoffs, and they'll probably maybe make me look stupid saying all of this. But in the meantime, I do want to get into our last segment because we're talking about the LA Kings, the preseason game. Just before I go into that, I just want to remind everybody it's mailbag day tomorrow. So please send us your mailbag questions, lockedoncanadiens@gmail.com, LO_Canadiens on Twitter, Locked On Canadiens on Instagram, YouTube comments. We will take your questions in whatever format that you send them to us, but please, 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 just indicate that it is a mailbag question. So we will be tackling it on the mailbag show. Ian will be back tomorrow. Don't worry. So let's get into our next segment, our final segment, where we talk about the NHL in Quebec City and the preseason games. This episode is also brought to you by Gametime. How often are you looking for tickets and you're scrambling at the last minute? There's something going on in your city and you really, really want to go to it, but you're having trouble finding tickets or tickets that are affordable. Let me tell you about Gametime. Gametime is so, so, so easy. Like when you want to go to a live event and you're looking for tickets, Gametime should be the only place you're looking because they have so many amazing features. They have, they've got zone deals, they've got flash deals. You can get tickets like at the last minute. One of my favorite things about Gametime is you can toggle the all-in pricing feature, which means that you will not see any surprise fees at checkout when you turn this feature on. You can also do seat views where you can see the view from your seat before you buy those tickets. They have a lowest price guarantee, and they've got Gametime ticket coverage because your purchase is covered with most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. When I tell you Gametime is the only place that you should be looking, I know what I'm talking about. And so you can take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. This episode is also brought to you by PrizePicks. You can now win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It is guaranteed. PrizePicks also offers weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts like Taco Tuesday. Each Tuesday, PrizePicks discounts select player projections up to 25% to provide even more value for your lineups. PrizePicks is the best way to win real money this football season. Which players are going off? Which ones aren't? Make your picks in less than 60 seconds and turn your sports opinions into real money all season long on PrizePicks. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNHL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNHL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. All right, before we sign off, I really quickly wanted to talk about the NHL in Quebec. So the LA Kings had 2 preseason games in Quebec City at, I think it's called the Videotron Arena, Place Videotron, whatever it is. And this, if you remember, cost the province of Quebec between $5 and $7 million. They literally shelled this out. And the reasoning they gave for this was to showcase Quebec City, which is fair, but also to showcase Quebec City as an NHL destination or a destination for sports. That is literally setting taxpayer money on fire. First of all, you should not be paying a team to come to the city, because if the argument that you're trying to make is that sports or hockey, in this instance specifically NHL hockey, is sustainable in your city, that visit should be paying for itself and being profitable. So if you're not doing that, like that in itself, like you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot. Like that argument is not holding water. Like you're not doing what you're setting out to do by paying a team to come, right? The team should want to come here and showcase the game here and make money, right? This should be a money grab for the team, but not from taxpayer dollars, not public money. Like I hate that. So that was something that was really, really frustrating. The LA Kings defended it, saying, they use the money to for plane tickets and taking care of the players, et cetera, hotels, all of that. I don't think that cost $7 million. I don't know. I'm not on the books for the LA Kings. I have no idea. I'm not their accountant, but that's a lot of money. So that's one thing that really bothered me, that we shouldn't be using public funds for this, because the second thing about this that bothers me is that there is no appetite from the NHL to bring a team to Quebec City. I think it's been very, very clear that there is not going to be a team coming to Quebec City. You have to read between the lines. Now, Gary Bettman said that, a lot of people think that it's Jeff Molson that gets in the way and he wouldn't want a team in Quebec City. He's come right out and said every time he's talked to Jeff Molson about this, Molson has been supportive of having a team in Quebec City. I believe, so this comes from TVA Sport. I believe it was also TVA Sport that asked Michael Andlauer, the owner of the Ottawa Senators, if he would object, and he seemed open to the idea as well. But the point is, the NHL is not open to this idea. They are not going to put a team in Quebec City because they keep saying that there needs to be a lot of stuff. There needs to be a good arena, there needs to be fan support, and there needs to be corporate support. And that's where you get stuck, because they don't have that right now. I am sure that if there was a team in Quebec City, most of most of the surrounding areas, large parts of Quebec would switch their allegiances and be diehard fans of whatever team goes to Quebec. Like, I want to call it the Nordiques because that just makes sense, like in a marketing standpoint, nostalgic standpoint, et cetera. But it's so frustrating because he's just saying like the conditions have to be right. He keeps saying the conditions have to be right. Then he talks about how, it's not going to come through expansion because he thinks we're good where we are right now. And then it's not going to come from moving because right now there doesn't seem to be a team for which there's an appetite to move them. Like, Arizona aside, like, that was going to be our best hope. You know what I mean? And that wasn't going to come to this conference anyway. It was going to stay in the West. So it feels to me that it didn't really move the needle in terms of the NHL wanting it here. I want it here as a Montreal fan. I would love to have that rivalry. I'm sick of the Ottawa Senators. I'm sick of the Toronto Maple Leafs. I'm sick of the Boston Bruins. I would love to have that Nordiques rivalry back. As fans, we would love that, right? Obviously, the Montreal Canadiens do stand to lose a little bit of revenue, but maybe not all that much, right? Like, if the TV deals are such that, or the schedule is such that, like the Montreal is on and Quebec City is on different days, like, people will tune in and keep, I watched the Toronto Maple Leafs game tonight. Do I like the Leafs? No. Am I a Kings fan? No. So, hockey fans like will watch those games. I just think that the NHL has kind of just, they never say no, but they clearly never say yes. And I think that is the big takeaway from all of this, is that the province paid between 5 and 7 million. There's no exact figure, but it's probably around 7 million for the LA Kings to come to Quebec City for a preseason game. They used public money to do it. They did it because they wanted to showcase Quebec as a hockey destination. I don't think that Quebec is not a hockey destination. I just think that it's not where the NHL wants to go. And so I feel like I'm glad that it was fun. Patrice Bergeron got honored. I'm glad it was a good time for everybody. I just still think that it was a waste of public funds. And, I might be wrong. If 2 years from now, there is an NHL team in Quebec City, even 5 years from now, if there's an NHL team in Quebec City, I will eat crow on this. But I get so frustrated because we shouldn't be paying them to come here. It should be paying for itself at the very least, right? So anyways, that was just my rant on the NHL and Quebec City, et cetera, et cetera. But again, as a fan, I would love to see it. So real quick, before we finish our episode, I did have to do trivia. So yesterday, Ian had a Remember Some Guys trivia question for us. And the question was, name the guy who had this career trajectory in the NHL. LA, Montreal, Washington, Chicago. If you guys got this, like, I'm so jealous, because when he told me the answer, I was like, oh my God, I cannot believe I did not get that. It is Cristobal Huet. The answer is Cristobal Huet. For anybody who didn't get it or did get it, who didn't get it and now is kicking themselves, yes, I am right there with you. So my trivia question is actually extremely easy. Who was the Montreal Canadiens captain at the time of the last game at the Montreal Forum? So if you do get that, I think it's more of a race to get that than anything else. Like I said, it was really easy. Without my co-host, I am nothing, particularly with respect to trivia. In the meantime, we will be back with a recap for that game on tomorrow's episode. And you can follow us on Twitter. You can follow us on Twitter at LO_Canadiens. You can find us everywhere you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube. Please subscribe, please like, please tell your friends. You can also find us on Instagram at Locked On Canadiens. Our email address is lockedoncanadiens@gmail.com. Send us mailbag questions there, or any observations or suggestions for trivia questions that are better than mine. And also, please make sure you follow my co-host on Twitter at Maybe It's Ian. You'll find me at The Active Stick. Thank you so much for listening. I will see you all tomorrow with Ian back.